Hey, what is up, mortals? It is AC here, and before we get into today's video, there's something I'd like to say. I'd like to let you all know that we have a merch store. Some of the items in it are only available for a limited amount of time, so if you're interested, go into the description box below and check it out. Each purchase helps us make more content. Secondly, if this video hits 300 likes by the end of the week, we will continue this what if. Thirdly, if you didn't know, only 41.3% of you guys are subscribed to us, so please hit that subscribe button and click the bell icon. Now, with that out of the way, let's get into the story. Not all men are created equal. Izuku had heard this quote 1,000 times, and he'd hated each and every one of them with merciless vigor. Such a cruel, cold, repetitive truth had no place in a world where hope could prevail. It was unfair, and that was the point of the quote itself. A gripping tale of contrasting dichotomy between those born without power and those born with too much of it, between the ones who could do nothing and the ones who could do more than they should be able to. That fact, Izuku felt, was never as clear as it had been between him and Bakugo back then. One powerless, one powerful. One who couldn't do anything. One who would grow to do great things. And look where it got them, huh? Gazing upon the structure's looming silhouette as Bakugo and Ida disappeared within, Izuku forced himself to swallow his fears dryly, clenching his fist tightly, enough to hurt. This sucked. He felt sick just thinking about it for too long, and the memory screamed at him in a symphony of pained yelps.
Okay,
Izuku muttered slowly, eyes drifting across the building in front of them as Ochako approached him.
here's the thing. I, have a plan. Kinda.
He noticed her lips curve upwards as the caramel-haired girl started to beam with him, eyes bright and somehow full of pride and wonder at once. It was flattering the way Ochako reacted, as if she knew he was smart enough to figure things out. Was this what having friends felt like? It was kind of terrifying.
I knew you'd figure out, Deku. You're friends with that Bakugo guy, right?
He swallowed dryly at that. Sure, he thought to himself dryly. Friends. The thought alone filled his mouth with the pungent taste of ashes in his mouth. The ashes of what could have been between him and his childhood friend, perhaps. A monument to a future he'd lost at age 4 in a doctor's office. A future consumed by the brief warmth of nitroglycerin explosions and a cruel smirk under the sunlight. A future he missed sorely. But it's fine, Izuku told himself in silence. He'd gotten another future, one entrusted to him by the thrusting hands of the Pillar of Peace, a torch that had touched 7 heroes, 7 dreams coalesced into a promise. Yes, I will be the symbol of peace.
Not exactly,
He settled for in place of verbalizing his thoughts.
He kinda hates my guts. But that's not the point. I've known him for a long time, right? So, I can say without a shadow of a doubt that Bakugo's gonna ditch Ida and come after me. Immediately.
He noticed it immediately, the way Uraraka reeled somewhat at his words, stars in her eyes giving way to a worried spark of paranoia. It made sense, of course, for she had been there when Bakugo tried to tear him a new one in the quirk assessment episode. Wow, having friends is weird.
Are you going to be okay?
That was a good question. Unfortunately, nope. He was not going down that particular rabbit hole of memories. Instead, he breathed in, letting the oxygen flow through his body slowly, splitting as each vein was reached, bathing his core in the cool energy that surrounded him. Let it flow through each blood cell, each thought, each synapse. Let it beckon the flame he'd been entrusted. He promised it to himself right there and then. He would never be afraid of Bakugo again. Izuku swallowed the cruel reality of his shattered future and nodded boldly.
Yes, I'll be fine. What matters is that we play to their plan and dance around their offense.
He pictured Serna's mind. What would he do, the most clinical person he'd been exposed to in a short lifespan? So, like he'd done when he was a child, he played pretend for a little while.
Knowing Ida-kun, when faced with Kachan's impulsiveness, he'll probably play by the book. So, I think it's logical to assume he'll hang back and protect the bomb in the safest place he can find. Now, knowing this, we have some options. We can play to that, try to move past Kachan and take out Ida-kun while Bakugo rushes us. We can double team Bakugo and take him out as quickly as possible, or I can hold him off while you take out Ida. I've seen enough of Bakugo to know how he'll fight and react to things, so it's up to you.
Ochako was silent for a few minutes, and Izuku was excruciatingly aware of their time ticking down. 5 minutes left became 4, and then 3. And just as the clock ticked down to 2 minutes, the caramel-haired girl answered. Izuku was shocked by the intensity in her eyes and words as she answered,
Let's take out Bakugo together, Deku-kun! Back at the quirk assessment, since he's not your friend, I don't have to hold back, right?
Yeah, Izuku thought meekly as the bell rang. Friendship is scary. Regardless, it was time to stop planning and start acting. Though they had agreed to go after Kacha together, going through the front door was still a stupid idea. They couldn't expose themselves further if they walked in screaming with a neon sign that said, "Attack me, please!" On the other hand, Bakugo wasn't dumb. He knew they'd think of that. He'd probably settled near the stairs, where he could easily access any floor he heard them stepping on. What he was, however, was impulsive. Izuku smiled to himself, reaching into his costume's pouch and grabbing one of his green marbles between 2 fingers. Ochako raised an eyebrow in silence, probably wondering what he was doing. He smiled confidently at her, heart soaring.
All right, let's go. Keep an ear open for the earpiece. If you can't talk, 1 tap for come, 2 for wait, 3 for go. And, I'd like to have a few moments with him. Before... You get it. Now, watch this.
Then he inhaled and screamed at the top of his lungs.
Ochako! Now! Let's go!
The scream was about as loud as he hoped it would be. Good. Before Ochako could do anything out of confusion, he took aim at a window on the last floor, letting the unbridled energy that was One For All flow through his veins, and threw the projectile as hard as he could. In a split second, the glass was shattered loudly, a shower of small mirrored shards raining down upon the ground below on both the inside and outside. And then, as the projectile hit the ceiling, he could hear the faint sound of something breaking. Perfect. He looked at Ochako, placing his index finger on his lips to indicate silence, and pulled her by the hand. She nodded, the spark of understanding reaching her gaze as she got what he'd done, and they both rushed as silently as they could past the front door. A diversion would be absolutely perfect, especially because nobody had seen him use projectiles up to that point, and therefore wouldn't assume he'd broken the window with an object instead of, his body. And that was perfect. They walked through the hallways as silently as they could without sacrificing speed, skipping the first floor entirely in favor of going up a floor, as he knew nobody would pick the first or last floors to settle the bomb with. Well, not usually. Given time, he suspected a smart villain might settle for somewhere hidden on the first floor in hopes that the heroes did as he had done and skipped it, but Ida hadn't had the time to be elaborate. He suspected the 3rd floor, but he couldn't be sure. Regardless, by his calculations, he had about 3 free minutes before Bakugo was back on the hunt for him and angrier than ever. Normally, he'd have gone straight after the bomb, but he and Uraraka had agreed that taking out their furious pursuer before taking Ida on was for the best. If the need arose, it wouldn't be particularly difficult to split mid-battle so that they don't jeopardize their chances. The building's layout was very clearly designed to be a maze of sorts, with winding hallways and small spaces to limit maneuverability, simulating a fight within a truly enclosed space. A bit overdone because this building was a step away from claustrophobic, but effective nonetheless. They both settled on different hallways on the 2nd floor near the stairways, backs to the wall, and with their ears alert to their partner's voice through the earpiece they were wearing on for sounds of Bakugo's arrival. Communication was key in this, because they really wouldn't have that much time. It didn't take long for him to hear it. Running. Bakugo was doing his best to keep silent. Surprisingly, he'd underestimated the boy. Had he not been silent and looking for it, Izuku was pretty sure the blonde would have caught him unaware. He tapped twice on the microphone, their agreed upon sign for wait, and then, just as Bakugo was around the corner, memories flashed through his mind. Way too many to keep track of, actually. Years and years spent staring at Bakugo's back, dismissed coldly as the explosive boy was showered in light. And yet, it had been Izuku who grasped the torch, because it was Izuku, not Bakugo, who understood what being a hero was. Being a hero was being hope. It meant facing the devil himself with a smile, so that all might gaze upon you and have confidence return to their hearts. And therefore, it was with a smile on his face, 10 times more confident than he truly felt, that he leapt out of his spot with a roundhouse kick ongoing. And the smile felt just a bit more genuine when he saw Bakugo's eyes widen just a second before the kick connected with the boy's face and he was sent reeling backwards, against the wall, but not to the floor. Bakugo reclaimed his position just as Izuku landed and found his, and the blonde snarled at him with the fury of 1,000 supernovas within his gaze.
Deku, you sneaky fuck! Who the fuck do you think you are?
Faced with words as intense as those, Izuku's lips trembled a bit in reprehension. He wasn't even sure what the boy was referring to. Opposing him? Going to UA? The ambush? But it didn't matter anyway.
I'm standing up for myself!
Bakugo raised his fists, brows lowering. He looked just as angry as he'd always been, but somehow solemn. Arrogant, but serious. Offended somehow. Fear once again. Fear swirling through his veins and across his skin, bile rising to his voice like the acidic hands laid upon him. But this time, Izuku was determined to swallow the venom and slay the dragon.
Come at me then, Kachan. I'm not the Deku who's afraid of you anymore.
Instead of fear, instead of anger, Izuku called forth the flames of One For All and let them warm up the cold logic he'd inherited from Sir. Power willed into existence surged just under his skin. Emerald sparks of static revealing the will beneath his jade eyes. Their eyes met for a second, and for that same second, all was quiet. And then, as the clock finally moved past that moment, the ground under Izuku's feet burst and broke with a thunderclap of his impulse. The air behind Bakugo's hands exploded under the force of his determination, and two immovable objects met halfway.
See? That there? That's why I hate your guts! You don't even have the courage to say you're fucking scared, so you swallow it and all pretend you're some fucking hero. Newsflash, Deku. Useless cowards don't get to do shit. And I'll teach you exactly that, you lying sack of shit!
Before we get back into the story, I would like to say that we've got a second channel called Anime Deep Dive. Anime Deep Dive goes over the hard facts of the anime presented. Now, in case you guys didn't know, we have a third channel called Anime Theory. Anime Theory mainly focuses on a variety of mind-boggling anime theories. If you're interested in content like this, please go check the description below, or click the eye icon in the top right corner. Now, with that out of the way, let's get back into the story. He had been expecting the right hook, and thus when it came, Izuku managed to dodge it. Even as he moved towards Bakugo, he twisted his body to the side, torso and arms moving with his will, just in time to make Katsuki's punch rip the air where he'd been, instead of truly meeting skin. Seeing an opportunity, Izuku jabbed a fist at Katsuki's face from the side, just as his feet touched the floor, and the satisfyingly harsh impact of his fist against Bakugo's skull sent ripples across the air, splitting some skin as a few droplets of blood escaped his lips. He didn't go down, however. Bakugo never went down, never backed down. That was what he admired in him. It wasn't really convenient when the boy stood his ground despite being hit, however, gazing at him with fury even as his head reeled to the side and pain filled his ribs as the explosion-quirked boy jabbed hard at them from the side, and he vaguely recognized the cracking sound as distinctly bad. He took a few steps to the side to wear out the force of the impact, but that was a mistake. Having been given space, Bakugo advanced to him like a hyena drawn to blood. It took all of Izuku's energy to keep dodging after the blonde initiated his onslaught. Explosive jabs, punches, and kicks were hastily blocked or dodged, and a few bruises were apparent under his costume. Sometimes, they'd connect, like a quick fist to his cheek accompanied by the taste of copper in his mouth, or an elbow to the ribs when he tried to block a kick. More often than not, he'd dodge, but a quick explosion gave Bakugo the impulse he needed. This was the difference between them. Bakugo had trained with his quirk for ages. He knew how to use it, how to fight with it, how to win with it. Izuku did not. And the thought of accidentally losing control of One For All and seriously hurting Bakugo was haunting even as the blonde seemingly tried to murder him. They moved through the hallway as if dancers, and at the end of the path, he knew Ochako would pounce despite his intentions. After all, if he let Bakugo push him until his back was against the wall, he was screwed. An open hand impacted his face head-on and then, crap! The explosion from his childhood friend's quirk erupted like a volcano against the fabric and goggles of his costume, ripping and burning them just as they blasted him across a few feet. He twisted in the air, moving with his instincts as his mind blanked from the pain, until his hands touched the ground and his fingers dug into the concrete with the aid of One For All. Having stopped the momentum, he used those same hands to push the ground with all of his might, 5% emanating from him. The concrete practically shattered under the intensity of it, boulders and spikes of rubble left behind as a crater was left in the floor. He soared through the air like a bullet, bathed in green, the very air in his path splitting when met with his unwavering advance. His head connected with Bakugo's stomach forcefully, and he heard the boy gag as blood once again emerged from his lips and he was sent reeling backwards. But Izuku wasn't going to give this chance up. He dug his heels into the floor to stop himself from moving, grabbing Bakugo by the ankles with all of his might, and threw the boy at the wall where Uraraka was with all of his power. A quick tap to the earpiece revealed what the girl already knew. This was her chance. Just as Katsuki's back connected explosively against the concrete wall, Uraraka grabbed a huge slab of concrete left behind from his destructive impulse, lifting it up as if it was nothing and slamming it as if a chair against the side of Bakugo's head. The impact was audible and violent, thunderous in nature, but it wasn't enough. From the dust cloud that resulted, loud explosions. Bakugo propelled himself forward with the expertise of a gymnast and the watch of a flaming forest. Both of his hands were extended backwards, as bruised and full of scratches as the rest of his frame, but he didn't back down. Deku! Katsuki reared his arm back, and then thrust it forward with an explosion aimed at Izuku's face. The green-haired boy twisted to dodge the brunt of it, but the heat was still alarmingly painful. Another explosion. Izuku caught Bakugo jumping over him. That wouldn't do. Before the blonde landed properly and got the chance to try an attack from his open back, Izuku stomped hard on the ground, breaking a hole into it as he launched himself into the ceiling. As soon as he did, he caught sight of Bakugo barely missing an angry explosion from his hands at his previous position. His back touched the wall. Bakugo aimed his gauntlet at him, a wild smile on his face, and before he could jump at Katsuki and stop him from doing whatever he wanted to, steps. Uraraka had managed to sprint past them, and was now throwing rocks at remarkable speeds at the boy, pelting his skin with small bruises. One of them hit his elbow, throwing his aim off, and Izuku saw the blonde's eyes widen. A loud, deafening explosion ran true, and in a flash of blinding light, a whole section of the ceiling and walls to Izuku's right simply ceased to be, blown up with a blast stronger than dynamite. That might have been lethal, Izuku realized with a gulp, but he had missed, and the recoil had gotten him off his feet. This was his chance. With the burst of One For All, Izuku was in front of Katsuki before the boy could properly react. He caught a hint of fear amidst the blonde's surprise, and at that moment, he wondered how much he'd changed from the boy he'd been. Midoriya reared his open hand back, focusing all 5% of One For All in that hand, and delivered the finishing blow. The hand connected with Bakugo's face, and the force of the movement was enough to aggressively push him against the ground. The boy's head hit the floor, and he didn't get up again. Bloody, pained, and bruised, Izuku removed the heels of his boot from the concrete and sent Uraraka a thumbs up. The girl, though a little worried, replied with one of her own. Bakugo is out! Though you should probably tie him up with the capture tape you were given. Oh, and 5 minutes left! Seems All Might had already got the gist of what Kacchan was like. After tying the explosive boy up, they both returned to their plan, namely, finding Ida. 5 minutes didn't feel like enough time, but they didn't have a choice. The pair didn't take long to find Ida. He had chosen to stay on the larger room available on the 4th floor, and was now standing menacingly with his arms crossed in front of the bomb. It wouldn't make much sense to sneak in, so Izuku settled for just walking in. They'd have ample space to work with, and a view of the room and of Tenya's attempts to advance on them. They had the advantage of numbers after all, and they didn't really need to beat him, just for one of them to keep him distracted while the other got the bomb. So, you have come, heroes. Though you might think your victory is certain after besting my accomplice, I assure you it won't be as easy as you believe. As a master of evil, I have planned for the situation. And he had. Instead of just cleaning the floor of all debris, Ida had stacked the metal crates and walls of crates around the room, stopping any direct advances. Though he immediately thought of having Ochako use their quirks on them to use his projectiles, the thought was dismissed. They were mostly close enough to Ida that he could use his engine to burst in their direction, attack through them, and get Ochako. Ingenious, he admitted. Though, the role-playing was somewhat off-putting. Uraraka clearly agreed, because she was currently fighting what was clearly a fit of laughter so intense, Ida would feel offended for the entirety of their school life, and just to look at her trembling lips made him want to giggle too. But, he could respect Ida's determination to the role. He cleared his throat, inhaled, and played along.
That's what you think, villain. But today, you will learn that justice is relentless.
Ochako looked at him like he'd just spat the truth of the universe in the form of dad jokes. Meanwhile, Ida puffed his chest from within his armor and nodded resolutely, not at all offended by his attempt at speaking like a hero. As expected! But you will find that I am not an opponent you can easily defeat. 4 minutes left, he thought to himself, meeting Uraraka's inquisitive gaze with his own. They both nodded together, lips parting into a smile, though she couldn't see his from under the mask, and advanced. Ida had seen through it, and the engines in his legs roared as he leapt at Uraraka with a kick from above. He was fast, Izuku noted, but One For All still gave him the edge, and he managed to jump in front of Uraraka with his arms crossed in front of his face before the kick connected. Instead, the strong kick impacted aggressively against Izuku's arms, parting some of the skin and probably cracking some bones, judging by the flare of pain he felt. The impact had enough force behind it to make the ground under his feet crack, boots digging into the concrete. But it was enough to give Uraraka an opportunity to escape. She slid beneath them, with more agility than he expected, rolling to get back to her feet and sprinting towards the bomb. Ida noticed it as well, head whipping to the sides, and he made a point of stepping at Izuku's arms to give himself the impulse he needed to reach her. Caught unaware, Izuku didn't manage to stop the boy's feet kicking against his chest as he pushed himself forward, twisting his body to land with his engines going. Uraraka was only a few feet away from the bomb, but it was clear Ida would reach her before she could touch her objective. Izuku made his decision in a split second, jumping to the side as he drew 3 emerald stamps and forcefully threw them with a twist of the wrist and the arm, green electricity accompanying the 3 bullet-like objects that parted the air with a loud whooshing noise. Both Ochako and Tenya heard it, but it was too slow to properly react to. One passed right over Uraraka's head, one impacted Tenya's shoulder, and the other his left leg. The impact was enough to throw him off balance, and the engine propelled him off his course, which was all the opportunity Izuku needed. With the power of his quirk coursing through his veins, the green-haired youth jumped at Ida with his fists reared back, unleashing a fast punch to Ida's armored chest powered by One For All. He heard the boy gasp as some of the armor cracked, and before he could blink, Ida had been thrown at the wall and made cracks run across its entirety. Izuku took a defensive posture in front of Ida as the blue-haired boy tried to get up. It was for nothing. "The bomb has been captured!" All Might announced through the speakers. Izuku turned around, and as his eyes reached Ochako's form hugging the bomb, he let a sigh escape his lips. "The hero team wins!" Thank you all for watching the video to the end. Now there are a few more things that I like to go over before the video ends. On behalf of We the Celestials, I'd like to thank the writer of this video and the editors for this video. Their details will be in the description. If you're a voice actor, editor, or writer, or you're interested in becoming one of those, go to the Discord that is in the description of this video and hit up the head of one of those areas. We're always looking for members to join us. That's it from us for today's video, so thank you all for watching, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you're interested, and hit that like button if you liked the video. Until next time, peace out mortals, have an amazing day!